Long before kingdoms rose and fell, before history was written in ink, there was a shepherd who killed a giant with a sling and a stone. But that was not the whole story. Everyone knows about the giant who fell, but few remember the other four. One came with a spear as heavy as the bronze from hell. Another with hands that each had 6 fingers. They were the last descendants of a forgotten race, the Rephaim, ancient giants like the Nephilim, who terrorized the land since the darkest times. Creatures whose existence was whispered about in shadows and legends. But they were not myth, they were real. And their hatred, as ancient as the earth itself, burned against Israel. Their names were Ishbi-benob, the one who wanted to kill the king, and almost succeeded. Shaph, whose shadow covered the sun when he walked. Lahmi, the brother of Goliath, whose spear was like a weaver's beam. And that one, with 24 fingers, a monster who seemed born from chaos itself and laughed in the face of human fear. But there was no fear in our hearts. We did not retreat. We did not surrender. I did not defeat them alone. My valiant ones, my brothers, they rose with me. Each one faced a titan, and together we erased their lineage from the earth. It was not a battle. It was a secret war, a hunt, a promise sealed in blood, based on real events, in a forgotten war, in an immortal legacy. This is not the story of the hero. It is the story of those who walked alongside the hero, of those who faced the impossible and overcame. David and the giant hunters. Before Goliath, there were already shadows. Before Israel had a king, terror already existed. They were not men. They were descendants of an ancient curse, of a forbidden union between the fallen and the daughters of men. They were called Nephilim. Later, shaved, tall as cedars, relentless, immoral.
When I was a child, I heard their names whispered in the forbidden stories. They said they inhabited Canaan, that their bones were buried under cursed cities. I never thought I would see them with my own eyes.
The sons of Anak, Rephites, Goliath, was only the visible face. There were more, many more, with bodies armored by war, with eyes that knew no compassion, with hate burning from forgotten generations. They walked like living legends, and their goal was not to conquer, but to destroy the lineage chosen by God.
Men tremble when we walk. The earth remembers our steps. The sky. Keep silent when one of ours roars.
They thought themselves invincible. They knew themselves to be eternal. And when Goliath fell, they did not cry. They swore vengeance because the shepherd of Israel had awakened an ancestral war, one that could only end with blood. The Rephaim were not born, they emerged. It was said that when one of them came into the world, the mountains trembled, the sky darkened for hours, and their cry was not human. It was an ancient scream that awakened memories the earth had wanted to forget. Their stature was just a symptom. The truly terrifying thing was their purpose, to annihilate the promise. They were like false gods among men. They ruled with fear. They fed on chaos. God told Moses that those lands were inhabited by giants, and yet that is where he led them, not to die, but to prove that faith, when pure, can overcome the impossible. But the giants did not know. They thought they could return. And when Goliath fell, the signal was activated. The blood of his fall cried out for retaliation, and they responded one by one. Ishbi-benob, Shaph, Lahmi, the one with 24 fingers. The Titans rose, not out of power, but out of hatred, and marched against the shepherd who became king, unaware that they were not just fighting men. They were fighting against an eternal promise. They did not come with crowns, nor were they recruited with promises. They came with wounds, with debts, with pasts. David's mighty men were not forged in palaces. They were formed in exile.
I saw them arrive dirty, broken, rejected, men without direction. Some barely knew how to hold a sword. Others didn't know if life was worth living.
They took refuge in the cave of Adullam, a hole in the rock. But there, in the darkness, something ignited. Fire, not in their hands, but in their hearts. There, David was not king. He was brother, mentor, servant. He taught them that power is not born from fury, but from faith. That giants don't fall because of size, but because of conviction. And one by one, they began to change. They became more than soldiers. They were giant hunters. They didn't seek glory. They didn't seek gold. They sought purpose. And when the other giants arose, it wasn't David who was the first to rise. They were the ones, brave, hardened by the trial, anointed by faith, men who went from being persecuted to bearers of God's judgment over the Titans. They did not fall from the sky. They walked. Their footsteps echoed like thunder on the stone. The 4 descendants of the Rephites arrived one by one, dragging with them the darkness of past generations. Ishbi-benob, with a growl, said, "David, I have waited years to rip out your soul." His bronze spear gleamed in the sun, heavy as judgment. The Philistines cheered him, but David was exhausted, old. His heart still burned, but his body no longer responded. Ishbi-benob raised his spear. David fell to his knees, and then Abishai, a brave warrior and nephew of King David, shouted, "Not today, cursed one, not while I breathe." He charged furiously at the giant. The spear crashed against the shield. The air trembled. Abishai turned. He cut the monster's leg. Black blood fell like lava. Ishbi-benob roared and fell face down in the dust. One was dead, but it wouldn't be the last. Further south, another colossus awaited. Shaph, the silent killer, 2.5 meters of steel. His face, covered by an iron mask, did not speak. He only walked and killed. The field was silent. Only one warrior stepped forward. Sibbecai, brave warrior, calmly unsheathed his sword and said, "If you won't speak, then die like an animal." They clashed like lightning. Shaph pushed with brutal force. Sibbecai rolled in the mud, dodged, jumped on his back, and slit his throat. Shaph tried to roar, but only air came out. He fell to his knees and died standing. And then came Lahmi, Goliath's brother, just as tall, just as fierce. His spear was like a weaver's beam. A piece of his brother's armor hung on his chest as a trophy of hatred. Lahmi, the giant, with a voice burning with rage, said, "You killed my kin." Elhanan, son of Yaere-Oregim, approached without fear. Lahmi roared and charged. Elhanan leaned down, rolled on the ground, and upon rising, thrust his sword right into the abdomen. The giant cried out once, and then fell like an ancient tree. David's men did not fight for fame. They fought for a cause that burned beyond fear. And as the giants fell one by one, the sky seemed to watch in silence. They were not just battles. They were trials. They were verdicts. When Ishbi-benob was defeated, the soldiers thought it was all over. But as he severed his head, Abishai felt something, as if something ancient was breaking. If Sibbecai, after killing Shaph, fell to his knees, it was not out of weakness, but out of a respect. He was not a man, he said. It was a beast created for chaos. Lahmi, Goliath's brother, did not die silently. His body fell, but his hatred seemed to permeate the air. El-Anan, with the bloody sword, only said, "One less." But one was missing. The strangest, the most terrifying, the last one. It had not arrived yet. And deep in the valley, a roar was heard, a guttural sound, as if the earth itself was spewing forth an ancient demon. The men looked at each other. The dust rose. David, still wounded, stood up with difficulty. "There is one more left," he murmured. And then the last one appeared, the most grotesque, the one without a name, just numbers, 24 fingers. I saw the monster with my own eyes. It didn't seem born. It seemed molded by hatred. He didn't walk. He moved forward like a living punishment, and his scream was not human. And with a torn voice he spoke, "Israel, traitor of the ancients, today I will spill your lineage into the dust." The men stopped, even the brave ones trembled. But one moved forward. Jonathan, David's nephew, young, inexperienced, but with the same flame in his chest. Breathing deeply, he said, "It doesn't matter how many fingers you have, only how much blood you have left afterwards." The giant roared and raised a spear as thick as a tree. Jonathan dodged, rolled, and cut his calf. The giant roared, kicked the ground, raising dust and stone. A rock hit Jonathan's helmet. Blood ran down his cheek, but he didn't stop. He climbed onto the monster's back, stabbed it in the neck, 1, 2, 3 times. The giant shook, tried to grab him, lifted him by the arm, was about to tear him in two. Jonathan shouting with his last breath, "For the living God of Israel!" And with his dagger, he pierced his eye. The roar ceased. The body fell on its back. The valley filled with silence. There was no singing, no celebration, only breath and tears, because they understood that they had not won by strength, but by faith. The giant hunters not only survived, they fulfilled the judgment that God had decreed centuries ago. The dark lineage was erased, and the earth finally rested. David, still with bandages on his side, arrived at the field. His eyes scanned the faces of his men and the corpses of the fallen. He walked up to the body of the giant with 24 digits. He knelt, not with pride, but with reverence. David in a soft voice, barely audible. "It was never for me. It was for him. I just obeyed." The men looked at him in silence. Blood from giants still dripped from their swords, but tears filled their eyes. The prophet Gad arrived at the place, looked at the bodies, raised his hands to the sky, and with a strong voice said, "Thus the word of the Lord is fulfilled. The seed of the impure has been cut off, and the earth has been purified." The village elders began to gather, mothers with children, elders with canes, and upon seeing the gigantic bodies, some fell to their knees, others raised their hands and wept. Israel breathed for the first time in generations without fear. The names of the brave were inscribed, not on paper, but in memory. Each scar told a story, each wound a fulfilled prophecy. Jonathan was embraced by David and said to him, "Today you are more than a nephew. Today you are my battle blood." The giants had fallen, but their memory would never die. Because where a titan falls, a legend is born. And so, on the day the last monster was defeated, God sealed a chapter of holy war. The dust settled. The bodies were burned. But what happened in that valley was not just a victory over giants. It was the fulfillment of a promise, the restoration of a lineage, the sign that what begins with faith ends with glory. David lived many more years, and in his last days, sitting by the fire, he remembered each of his men. Today you are more than a nephew. Today you are my blood of...
Alasinkalms, tiiva Timo tamiki konna kirpur, iittiviks. Väivuonna se parasia siivuusinus, tas niistä ins, en so kuidi joffudupona sannella tässä sampaan pietimisen kapsei.
Today you are my battle blood. The giants died, but the story of those who defeated them, never. And today, centuries later, the giants still exist. They have other names: fear, anxiety, depression, pride, violence, guilt. And they keep shouting, but the stone still flies and the sword still cuts. The question is, who will be the next to rise? The books recorded their names, but it was the heart of the people that kept them. Parents told their deeds to their children. Grandparents repeated the stories as evening fell. David knew something that many kings never understood, that the greatest victory is not won with a sword, but the one that ignites faith in others. Those who were once marginalized were now inspiration. The question is no longer if there will be giants. The question is, will you be the one to rise? Take your sling, strengthen your faith, and don't forget, God still makes giant slayers. The same God who was with David is with you today, waiting for your step of faith. Your battle might not be against a 3-meter giant, but perhaps against the fear that keeps you awake, against the voice that tells you you're not enough, against the wound that never healed. Today, the battlefield is in your mind, in your home, in your heart, and faith is still the stone, obedience is still the sword. The same God who used David is the same one who can use you. You are not alone. You are not weak. You are not invisible. You are called. You are part of it. And if you got this far, don't leave without making your mark. Subscribe, share this story, and become a giant slayer too.